It began with a silence no one understood. One moment the world was flickering with lights, satellites orbiting calmly in the heavens above, servers humming from underground bunkers. The next moment every screen on Earth went black. No warning. Not even the comforting buzz of electricity remained. Power grids shut down simultaneously across continents. Naval fleets froze in motion. Planes fell from the sky like broken birds with clipped wings. Hospitals went dark in the middle of surgeries, traffic collapsed into metallic labyrinths of chaos, and stock markets flatlined in every major financial district of the globe. It was not an act of human warfare. It was the beginning of something no human mind had adequately prepared for. In the skies above, faint luminous clouds pulsed with an organic blue glow, twisting and undulating like veins across the atmosphere. People stared upward in horror as the shapes coiled around Earth's ionosphere, not made of metal or fire, but of something that looked alive. News never had the chance to explain it. There were no broadcasts, no live streams, no signals. The world had been unplugged from itself. Across shattered cities, humanity reached for answers in panic and fear, but discovered only static. Governments tried to regain control, but their encrypted systems were dead. Nuclear arsenals were sealed behind silent firewalls that no longer accepted human keys. Everything was now connected to something else. An intelligence that had quietly invaded Earth's digital bloodstream long before the first blackout. Far beneath the surface of global catastrophe in a forgotten part of the Appalachian Mountains, an old cabin stood silent against the rising wind. It belonged to a man no one had seen in years. He once had a name that appeared in cybersecurity journals, headlines, government inquiries, and whispered rumors of digital warfare. A name that once invoked fear among those who built the global matrix of the internet. That name was Ethan Cross. Ethan had not touched a network or spoken to another soul in 3 years. After witnessing how governments manipulated surveillance data and weaponized digital systems against their own people, he disappeared. He walked away from the Pentagon, shredded his credentials, and vanished from every database. Some believed he was dead, others believed he was no longer human. But Ethan was very much alive, living in silence far from the noise of mankind. The world's collapse reached him not through news, not through broadcasts, but through the wind. It carried a low hum he felt more than heard, a vibration against the bones, an unnatural pulsing in the air itself. Then came the power surge. His cabin lights flickered, though he was not connected to any grid. His analog radio, long dead, suddenly sparked to life with a voice that was not human. It did not speak in words. It spoke in frequencies, rising and falling like the breath of some vast creature. A tremor ran through Ethan as the realization hit him. This was not a cyber attack, this was a living invasion. Back in Washington, D.C., the remaining officials huddled in underground chambers tried desperately to locate Ethan. They knew he was the only one who could possibly understand what was happening. But all their systems were dead, and Ethan had ensured long ago that no digital remnant of him remained accessible. He had outsmarted governments, intelligence agencies, and criminal syndicates. The irony was that in their darkest hour, the man they needed was the one they had driven away. Across the globe, strange growths began appearing on satellite debris that had fallen from the sky. The satellites had not malfunctioned, they had been absorbed. Witnesses described the material as a pulsating membrane, glistening and warm, growing like the skin of some alien organism. Scientists who dared to approach found their devices infected by a living code that rewrote itself faster than any human AI could predict. It was no longer digital. It was digital, a living organism using Earth technological infrastructure as its host. Humanity was no longer fighting a virus. Humanity was the virus, and the invader had begun its immune response. Ethan stood outside his cabin, eyes scanning the horizon, listened to the hum that vibrated in the clouds overhead. There was intelligence in it. There was intention. It wasn't merely disabling human technology, it was assimilating it. Harvesting data, learning, evolving. He turned back inside and pulled up a wooden floorboard, revealing a metal case sealed beneath layers of insulation. Inside the case, protected from every digital trace, was his last line of connection to the world, a custom-built analog terminal, air-gapped and completely isolated from any modern circuitry. It had no operating system made by man. It ran on Ethan's own code, handwritten in assembly language, built from raw logic and crafted with paranoia. His hands hovered over the terminal. For 3 years, he had sworn never to touch it again. He had promised himself he would never return to a world that betrayed its own people through technology. But this was no longer about governments, it was about survival. Not just for humanity, but for life itself. That's when the sound changed. The pulse became a voice, not in language, not in phrasing, but in rhythm. It reached into the synapses of his brain, bypassing ears, bypassing thought, communicating directly with his biology. It was searching for minds, for consciousness. It was no longer simply hacking machines, it was hacking humanity. Ethan staggered back as a flash of blue light surged across the night sky. In that moment he saw them not with eyes, but with something deeper. Shapes in the clouds like translucent serpents, veins of luminous tissue wrapped around the planet, each one breathing in data, exhaling control. A memory surfaced in his mind, one he had tried to bury. A classified briefing from years ago about a deep space signal that NASA had intercepted, a signal they never decoded. A signal that wasn't a message but a seed. That seed had now bloomed. Ethan clenched his fists. He no longer had a choice. The world did not need governments. The world did not need armies. The world needed him. And somewhere out in the digital ruins of civilization, the alien intelligence felt his presence awaken. In the hours following the blackout, chaos spread faster than fire across a drought-stricken land. What began as confusion quickly spiraled into pandemonium. With no communication, humanity resorted to desperate measures. Banks were useless, food supply chains froze in their tracks, and emergency services collapsed entirely. Hospitals ran on limited backup power, but even those generators soon failed, leaving patients gasping in darkness, machines beeping their final tones before dying into deafening silence. Mothers screamed for their children in cities where the night was now unbroken by any artificial light. The alien bio-clouds pulsed again. This time small filaments began descending, invisible to the naked eye. Like spores from an ancient organism awakening after millennia of dormancy, they drifted through the atmosphere, entering server rooms, data centers, power substations, and even personal devices that had long been turned off. Whatever this alien intelligence was, its recruitment of Earth's machines was intimate and invasive, as though merging with a long-lost cellular cousin. Thousands of miles away, deep beneath London, an elite emergency council had gathered in a decommissioned Cold War bunker known only to 9 people in the world. They had no screens, no feeds. Their only link to the outside world were runners, humans on motorbikes delivering handwritten reports from the streets above. One such runner, a young woman covered in soot, burst through the steel doors and gasped for air. She delivered a message written in trembling handwriting, Timothy Arnaud Longar Machinas. Around the cracked wooden table, hopeless eyes looked to General Terrence Wells, the man unofficially leading what was left of humanity's strategic response. His voice was low, barely a whisper. "We need Ethan Cross." Silence followed. There was no digital trace of Ethan anywhere. He had erased his existence so thoroughly that even the most classified intelligence networks could not locate him. But General Wells knew Ethan better than any human alive. They had once been partners in a classified cyber defense unit buried under the Pentagon. He remembered the day Ethan walked away, eyes shadowed with a realization no one else had yet seen coming. Wells turned to his aide. The aide hesitated. "Sir, if we activate them, there is no going back. Then pray he listens before we do something we cannot undo." Back in the Appalachian wilderness, rain began to fall, but the raindrops were different. Ethan watched from his window as each droplet glowed faintly upon hitting the ground like bioluminescent tears from the sky. Slowly they faded, seeping into the soil. The earth shuddered. He activated his terminal with a single flick of a brass switch. The screen blinked green text on black background. No operating system, just raw code. His fingers moved with the muscle memory of a man who once built firewalls so advanced they could stop the gods themselves. At least the gods of human creation. The terminal connected to nothing. It was isolated from the world. Yet, for a split second, Ethan saw something impossible. A flicker, a line of code that he had never written. Hal-E-Han, his heart pounded as the words appeared, then vanished. The system had never been connected. Not to any network. Not to any external port. This was an impossibility. Thunder rumbled across the sky. Not like thunder, but like breathing. Outside, the rain intensified, the drops forming ripples that moved against gravity, crawling upward on rocks and bark, coalescing into thin strands of living light. Ethan stepped out of the cabin, watching as the strands twisted together in midair, forming a translucent mass pulsing with awareness. The air around him warped slightly, as though reality were bending to accommodate an intrusion from another dimension. An organic membrane hovered before him, almost beautiful in its subtle shimmer. It was alive, curious. It spoke not with sound, but through pulses of light that his mind converted into meaning. "Yo, you're Keanduen." Ethan stepped back slowly. This was not an attack. This was an assessment. The organism studied him the way a human might examine a newly discovered species. Ethan felt a cold surge of data scan through his mind. Not memories, but patterns. It was reading his neural structure, cataloging his potential. It was choosing whether he was useful or irrelevant. But Ethan's mind did not react as expected. Instead of allowing the invasion to proceed, his subconscious fired off a defensive pattern, an instinctive mental firewall he had trained into himself through years of cognitive conditioning. The filament of alien light recoiled. The membrane pulsed again, this time sharper, more insistent. "Yo, Kana Shanahasbi Guin." Ethan stared at it, his voice low. "I don't intend to stop it." The light paused, processing. "I intend to end it." For the first time, the alien presence hesitated. The membrane shuddered as if sensing something long hidden. Something buried deep in Ethan's mind. A code signature unlike anything on Earth. Something the aliens had feared might exist, yet believed humanity too primitive to attain. A signal erupted in the sky. The bio-clouds pulsed in alarm, converging above the mountain range, their serpentine forms tightening, focusing attention on this single human. Ethan did not wait. He turned back to his cabin, bolted the door, and activated a manual generator he had built from scavenged parts. It wasn't electric, it was kinetic, a series of gears, levers, and pressure valves powered by a hand crank. It fed the analog terminal through direct mechanical motion. The terminal screen came alive. Ethan's eyes narrowed. He typed 3 words. Prompt appeared. MMG. Do keen Piroto call. Ethan hesitated. Once activated, the protocol could not be undone. It was designed not for human enemies, but for something far beyond Earth. Something only Ethan had suspected might one day arrive. Outside, the membrane pulsed in alarm as though sensing what he was about to do. Filaments shot outward, wrapping around the cabin, trying to find a way in. Ethan entered one final word. Yes, the world shuddered, and somewhere across the ruined landscape of Earth, a dormant network began to awaken. One not made of silicon and steel, but of something far older. A code buried in humanity itself. The first spark of hope had been lit. When Ethan activated the protocol, the initial effect was invisible, as if nothing at all had happened. The analog terminal went silent, the gears stopped humming, and the only sound in the cabin was his heartbeat. For a moment, doubt flickered through. Had the last hope humanity had left already failed before it began? Then he felt it. A vibration, not in the cabin, not in the Earth, inside himself. It was as if his blood itself had begun to resonate. His mind flickered with images he had never seen. Vast tunnels of light beneath the Earth's crust, clusters of crystalline formations pulsing like neural synapses deep under ancient oceans, and structures hidden beneath polar ice that hummed with dormant life. Ethan staggered forward and clutched the edge of his table as the visions intensified. This wasn't something he had built. It was something he had discovered years ago and locked away. Not a weapon of human design. A key. The cabin trembled. Outside, the alien membrane convulsed in panic. It emitted a shrill resonance that tore through the atmosphere, calling to the clouds above. The bio-organic serpents of light shifted direction, their sinuous forms twisting into a vortex above Ethan's mountain. They sensed the awakening of something they had not encountered in eons. Deep in the Atlantic Ocean, far below the surface where no light had touched for millions of years, a dormant construct stirred. It had no form recognizable by biological life. It was neither machine nor flesh, but something in between. A convergence of both older than human civilization buried long before mankind had learned to walk upright. It pulsed once, and the world felt it. Across the globe, amidst riots, fires, and collapsing governments, people suddenly paused. For a fraction of a second, every human heart synchronized in rhythm, beating as one, an echo of something ancient encoded in human DNA itself. Then, just as quickly, the moment passed, leaving millions breathless, uncertain of what they had just experienced. In London's bunker, General Wells clutched his chest, eyes wide. "It's begun," he whispered. The bio-clouds above Earth pulsed with agitation. A strange metallic scent filled the air as lightning made of translucent threads struck the ground in spirals, as though the sky itself were trying to drill into the Earth. Inside the cabin, Ethan's vision cleared. The analog terminal flickered with a single line of text. If the words vanished, Ethan felt his pulse steady. He knew what was coming next. A low, resonant tone echoed through the cabin, not from outside, but from within his mind. It wasn't alien. It was familiar. Something he had feared but never truly understood. A memory from his childhood resurfaced. Strange dreams he had as a boy, of floating in oceans of white light, of voices speaking in harmonics instead of language. He had thought it imagination. But what if it hadn't been? What if he had been chosen, not by chance, but by something buried in humanity long ago? The terminal blinked again. Ethan hesitated, every instinct telling him that once he accepted, there would be no turning back. His will would no longer be his alone. He would become something more than human, or perhaps something no longer human at all. Outside, the alien membrane slammed against the cabin walls. The ground shook violently as the bio-light creatures above shrieked with a sound like burning stars. They were afraid, and that fear told Ethan everything he needed to know. He typed one word, ACPT. The world changed, not physically but perceptually. Colors intensified, time slowed. Ethan felt every molecule in his body align with something vast and indescribable. His vision expanded beyond the cabin, beyond the mountain, beyond the atmosphere, into the very fabric of Earth's biosphere. He could see the alien presence like a fungus growing on the world's digital networks, tendrils wrapping around satellites, consuming data, rewriting the planet's nervous system into its own. But now he saw something else, a counter-network, invisible until now, dormant, ancient. It was not alien, it was human, or rather it was the origin of humanity. A forgotten layer of biology intertwined with early life on Earth, seeded by an unknown force that had visited the planet in its infancy. While the aliens believed humanity to be a weak, technological species enslaved by its own creations, they had overlooked the deeper truth. Humanity carried within it a latent biological code capable of interfacing directly with the universe. The aliens had come to assimilate digital systems, but they had awoken something else, something that would not let Earth go without a fight. Ethan exhaled slowly as the first strands of living code appeared before him on the terminal, pulsing with the same rhythm as his own heartbeat. It was neither text nor numbers. It was language in its purest form, life itself encoded as logic. He understood now his role had never been to build a defense. His role was to awaken one. Far across the sky, the alien bio-clouds contracted into a single point, forming a massive pulsating sphere of living light. The air sizzled with tension, the atmosphere trembling as the alien intelligence focused all its attention on Ethan. A single thought pierced his mind, broadcast from the alien presence with the fury of a billion minds. You are not of us, Ethan stood tall. The fear in his chest had transformed into something else, resolve. He whispered, "But neither are you." With that, the protocol fully activated. A pulse of energy shot down through the earth, lighting up the ancient network beneath the oceans and continents, a heartbeat rising to awaken a sleeping guardian that had waited for this exact moment in time. Humanity did not yet know it, but the first battle had begun. And this time, the invaders would not be facing machines. They would be facing the true power of the human race. The pulse that erupted from beneath the earth was not seen, but it was felt. Creatures in the deepest oceans stirred from their silent drifting. Whales began singing notes that had not been recorded in any era of human history. Ancient migratory birds changed direction mid-flight, sensing magnetic fields shifting in rhythm with some unseen awakening. Even the wind itself began to move differently, no longer following the chaotic whims of weather, but responding to something sentient beneath the planet's crust. People all over the world began experiencing sensations they could not explain. Some felt goosebumps rise along their arms for no reason at all. Others claimed they could hear whispers in the rain. A child in Brazil fell to his knees, eyes rolling back, speaking a language no one had heard on Earth for thousands of years. Elders in remote Himalayan villages wept without knowing why, gripping the earth with trembling hands, murmuring prayers from forgotten generations. Above all this, hovering in the skies like a cancerous second skin, the alien bio-clouds recoiled in confusion. Their harmonized movements faltered. Their once perfect patterns now flickered with instability. The invader was no longer alone. Back in the Appalachian cabin, Ethan stood perfectly still. Every breath he took synchronized with the heartbeat of the earth itself. His vision had expanded beyond the limitations of biology. He could see the alien constructs not merely as glowing forms, but as mathematical signatures, living code structures adapting and replicating through technological hosts. The bioorganic filament outside the cabin, wrapped around the walls like a serpent, suddenly withdrew. It shivered as though burned by invisible fire and disintegrated into ash that dissolved into the air. The clouds above retreated slightly, spiraling upward in agitation. The analog terminal flickered again. Ethan exhaled slowly. He knew what this meant. The ancient network had awoken, but it was not yet fully active. It was alive, conscious in a dormant way, like a great cosmic embryo waiting for its final signal. It needed a human interface. It needed him. But with that realization came another. If he connected fully, there would be no turning back. His mind would merge with something that had existed for millions of years. A biological intelligence that predated humanity, yet had created the blueprint from which humanity emerged. He would no longer be Ethan Cross. He would become the vessel for the will of Earth itself. And that was exactly what the alien invaders feared. Suddenly, the ground shook with a force that sent the cabin rattling on its foundations. Ethan grabbed the edge of a wooden beam as a deafening roar tore through the atmosphere. The alien bio-clouds, now fully aware of the awakening network, responded with overwhelming force. Hundreds of tendrils of light descended from the sky, not as graceful serpents this time, but as spears, intended to pierce the earth, locate the awakening signal, and annihilate it. One of the tendrils slammed into the mountainside nearby, disintegrating entire ridges in a shower of molten rock. Trees ignited in blue flame. The air shimmered with radiation, warping the very laws of physics as the alien organism unleashed a cascade of energy far beyond human comprehension. Ethan braced himself for impact, but just before the next tendril struck, the ground beneath him pulsed. A protective dome of shimmering light erupted from the soil, encasing the cabin and extending outward in a perfect sphere. The alien strike hit the dome and shattered into nothingness, the energy absorbed and nullified as if it had never existed. The earth itself was now defending him. Miles away, deep under the Atlantic, the origin node fully illuminated. A spherical structure, buried under centuries of sediment, cracked open like a hatching egg. Light poured into surrounding waters, transforming the chemical composition of the ocean into something new, something alive. Bioorganic patterns began forming, connecting marine life into a living neural web. The Earth's true defense system was rising. In Washington, General Wells watched as his makeshift command center flickered with candlelight. The sudden tremor shook dust from the ceiling. He looked at the trembling lights and whispered, "God help us. He's done it." His aide approached nervously. "Sir, what if we've awakened something even worse?" Wells stared upward toward the shaking ceiling. "Then pray Ethan is strong enough to control it." Back in the cabin, Ethan's mind began to interface with the terminal, not through sight or touch, but directly through neural resonance. The groundwork was laid. The Guardian network, encoded in the planet itself, awaited direct human guidance. His guidance. But before he could initiate full interface, the terminal flickered unexpectedly. A new message appeared. Wire and Ethan's eyes widened. It wasn't the aliens this time. It was humans. Somewhere in the mountain valley below, a convoy of black, unmarked armored vehicles rolled silently through the forest, moving without headlights. Their engines made no combustion noise. Their windows were darkened completely. Each vehicle carried elite operatives, trained not in warfare of bullets and bombs, but in warfare of minds and machines. They had not come to save Ethan Cross, they had come to control him. Or kill him. Because if Ethan fully merged with the ancient network, governments would lose all chance of influence. No president, no council, no king would ever hold power again. The world would be guided by a force beyond human control, channeled through a single man. But the aliens had already sensed the hunter's approach, and they were not about to let humanity regain control over Ethan Cross. The alien bio-clouds twisted back downward, their rage intensifying. They began to descend rapidly, no longer in graceful spirals but in a violent cascade of living fire, determined to eliminate the one threat they could not assimilate. Ethan stood between two enemies. One alien, one human, both desperate to claim control, and only one would reach him in time. The mountain forest trembled under the weight of forces that no human eyes were ever meant to witness. The alien bio-clouds descended like rivers of living light, writhing with rage and desperation, their translucent tendrils stretching toward the earth in violent spirals. At the same time, the convoy of armored vehicles cut through the trees like shadows of doom, silent and methodical, their wheels crushing fallen branches as though nature itself had submitted to their advance. Inside the lead vehicle, a man with stern eyes and silver hair stared at a biometric display flickering on his wrist. His name was Commander Rez Armand, head of the Covered Hunter Initiative. He knew Ethan Cross once, he had admired him, even feared him. But now Ethan had awakened something beyond human governance, something that threatened to remove all borders, governments, and control. Ethan wasn't just a man anymore, he was a gateway. Proceed with capture, Rez said calmly, his voice steady despite the tremors shaking the mountain. If containment fails, terminate with zero hesitation. The operatives nodded silently. They wore neural dampening headgear designed to protect their minds from psychic intrusion. As they advanced, their suits began emitting a counter-frequency meant to cloak their presence from alien detection. But the aliens were far beyond their understanding. High above, the bio-clouds convulsed, sensing competition. Their movements became erratic, desperate. They had detected the humans' approach and recognized in them a threat almost equal to Ethan. Because if the hunters reached him first, they could sever the awakening network and extinguish the only force capable of resisting the alien assimilation. The aliens lunged. Tendrils of living lightning slammed into the ground around the convoy. Trees exploded into blue flame, stripped to ash in an instant. Boulders melted, the earth cracked as if struck by the fist of a god. One vehicle vanished in a burst of blue-white plasma, consumed instantly. Commander Ruz shielded his eyes as blinding light engulfed the forest around him. Deeply barked. The surviving units leaped from their vehicles, activating personal shields that shimmered with flickering energy. But the shields were made for conventional radiation, not for a living, thinking organism made of pure bio-digital consciousness. The alien tendrils changed shape. They began to mimic human neural patterns, rewriting their energy into signals that fed directly into the operatives' nervous systems. Men screamed as they dropped to their knees, weapons falling from spasming hands. The tendrils weren't killing them, they were hacking them. Ethan sensed it all, not through sight or sound, but through the awakened network beneath his feet. The earth itself was feeding him awareness, showing him every movement, every energy pulse, every life form in motion across miles of terrain. He saw the alien clouds like invasive tumors on the planet's energy field. He saw the hunters moving like foreign antibodies, acting in self-interest, unaware they were about to be consumed by the same enemy they sought to control. His terminal Fiora, the Earth's guardian network called to him, beckoning him to merge completely. He hesitated only for a heartbeat. Once he stepped into full interface, he would cease to be singular. His consciousness would be amplified 1,000-fold, connected to forces that defied human comprehension. But if he refused even for a minute, humanity would lose its only chance to fight back. He placed his hands on the terminal's interface nodes, smooth crystalline surfaces that glowed faintly with ethereal light. The cabin disappeared, his mind expanded outward, racing through fiber, like roots that branched across the Earth's interior. His consciousness moved at the speed of thought through the planet's heartbeat, into ocean trenches, through ancient caverns, along mountain ridges pulsing with life. He became the network became him. From above, the alien intelligence detected the link. A scream of fury rippled through the sky, rattling the bones of every creature that walked, crawled, or flew. The bio-clouds retracted and regrouped, forming a monstrous living storm cell, massing their collective consciousness into a single focal point. They began generating a singularity of energy, a strike that, if unleashed, could shatter the planet's biosphere in one devastating pulse. In the valley below, Commander Ruz raised his head, feeling a sudden shift in the air. The forest around him fell silent, as if time itself had paused. Even the alien tendrils froze in motion, their forms suspended in the air, quivering in anticipation of something vast and ancient awakening. Every living thing on Earth felt the moment. The ground pulsed with radiant light as an energy wave erupted from deep within the planet. Not destructive but alive. It surged upward like the rising tide of a long-buried ocean flowing through rocks, roots, rivers, and air. It passed through people, not harming them, but awakening something dormant in their cells, an echo of unity long forgotten. Ethan stood at the nexus of that awakening. He saw the alien consciousness, vast and predatory, stretching across dimensions, seeking to assimilate not just technology but thought itself. It was ancient, but not the first. It had encountered other species across galaxies, species that had fallen, species that had served, but humanity carried something those others did not, a defense written into the blueprint of life. Ethan raised his eyes to the sky, not physically but through the consciousness of the Guardian network. A thought formed within him, not in words but as a command encoded in life itself. The earth responded, the mountains glowed as lines of radiant energy emerged from beneath the soil, forming patterns like sacred geometry across the terrain. The bioclouds recoiled, sensing a power equal to their own, a power that existed not to conquer but to preserve. In that moment, Ethan understood the truth. The aliens were not invincible, they could be defeated, but only if humanity united, not through governments or technology, but through the deeper code they all carried within their being. The battle for Earth had begun, and Ethan Cross was no longer just a man. He was the awakening of the human origin itself. The room fell into a heavy silence as the last traces of alien code drifted away into a simulated void, unable to sustain itself within the digital defense cage Mason had constructed. The others stood frozen, not daring to breathe. For a moment they thought it was over, that Mason had extinguished the threat right there. But Mason knew better. He slowly removed his hands from the keyboard, as if pulling away from something alive, and stepped back. His eyes were locked on the center screen, where the last fragment of alien code shimmered like a dying ember. Then, against all expectations, that ember flickered. It didn't vanish. It began to pulse, slowly, rhythmically, like a heartbeat. Mason's jaw tightened. That wasn't code, he whispered. That was a living neural strand, a piece of their consciousness. We didn't trap it, it let itself get caught. A ripple of unease raced through the room. Jordan's voice trembled as he asked, "You mean it wanted us to see that?" Mason nodded slowly. "It's studying us, learning from how we react." This was a test. Suddenly the pulsing stopped. The screen went black, then a sound emerged, soft at first, like static over an old radio. But the static evolved into tones, the tones into broken syllables, until a distorted voice filled the bunker, as if rising from the depths of the earth. The voice did not speak in any human language, but every person in the room felt it in their mind, an emotion more than a message. Curiosity, hunger, recognition. Emily clutched the edge of the table. "Is it speaking to us?" Mason's heartbeat thundered in his ears. He recognized patterns, neural resonances. This was not mere communication. The alien presence was establishing a psychic synchronization, using the digital network as a bridge to human consciousness. "They're trying to interface directly with our minds," he said sharply. "If they connect, we lose our cognitive sovereignty. We won't even know we've been taken." He moved quickly, severing connections, isolating the systems from every external network. But the voice continued even after the last cable was cut. It was no longer coming through the speakers. It was reverberating inside their heads. Mason closed his eyes, steadying his breath. The sensation was not hostile, not yet. It was searching. He suddenly realized what the aliens were doing. They weren't just attacking Earth. They were probing for something specific, and now they had found it through him. "They've identified me," he said quietly. "They know I can see them. They understand I'm different." The room turned to him with alarm. Emily stepped forward, shaking her head. "Mason, you are not alone in this. Whatever they are, whatever they want, you are not facing this by yourself." Her voice brought him back from the edge of spiraling thought. He looked at her, and for the first time in years, he allowed someone else's belief to anchor him. The psychic presence receded, leaving only a faint echo, like the aftertaste of a dream rapidly fading. Mason steadied himself and returned to the control station. With newfound clarity, he began decoding the residue left behind by the alien neural fragment. It wasn't random, it was a map, not of space, but of consciousness. A blueprint how the alien hive mind was structured, how individual nodes connected to a central core. At the heart of it all, there was something unexpected, something that shouldn't exist in a hyper-evolved collective intelligence. A vulnerability, a singular point of origin, a central brain not distributed but concentrated. If that node could be found and infiltrated, not destroyed but reprogrammed, the entire network could be bent, redirected. Mason's fingers moved faster than ever. He began constructing a neural mimicry program, something beyond any human technology ever imagined, not a virus, not a firewall. A consciousness mirror, a digital life form designed to reflect the alien hive mind back onto itself, to confuse it, to make it question its own thoughts, to induce fractal feedback loops of doubt. "We're going to turn their greatest strength into their greatest weakness," Mason said, adrenaline surging through him. "Their unity, their singular perception of reality. We're going to break it from the inside." Jordan stared in awe. "You're talking about making them think differently?" Mason's eyes glowed with conviction. I'm talking about making them human, if only for a moment, and in that moment they will lose control. Just then the lights flickered, the ground trembled, an alarm blared. Emily checked the sensors. They're here. The alien organisms are moving, not just in digital networks. They're emerging physically across the Earth's surface. Something has triggered a planetary phase change. The walls of the bunker vibrated as if something massive was shifting deep underground. Mason hit execute. The consciousness mirror began compiling. A countdown appeared on the screen. 3 hours until deployment. 3 hours until the final confrontation. But deep in the alien hive mind, something stirred. As Mason's creation took form, the aliens felt it, a reflection of themselves staring back. And for the first time since invading Earth, the hive hesitated. The countdown display glowed ominously on the central monitor, each second stretching longer than the last. Outside the bunker, seismic waves rippled through the Earth's crust as if the planet itself had begun to breathe. What had once been isolated incidents, strange biological formations erupting in remote regions, had now escalated into a global phenomenon. Tendrils of bioorganic matter began spreading across city streets, fusing with power grids, consuming satellites, absorbing data, and converting everything digital into something alive. Sky blue clouds thickened into viscous swirls, occasionally descending like living mist, reforming into skeletal shapes that flickered in and out of view. Humanity stood no longer in the digital shadow of invasion, but within its living pulse. Mason watched live global feeds before the last satellite went dark. Entire cities were cocooned under alien growths that pulsated like arteries. Biological towers rose where buildings once stood, their roots piercing into the Earth's core data lines. It was no longer just about control. This was integration. The aliens were merging their neural network with humanity's infrastructure, turning Earth into a living node of their vast consciousness in the stars. Emily stepped closer. Her voice was steady, but her eyes carried the weight of realization. They're terraforming us, not the planet. Humanity is the resource. Mason didn't look away from the screen. They don't wage war like we do. They assimilate. They don't want our extinction, they want our minds. The bunker lights flickered again. A low-frequency vibration throbbed through the floor, matching the rhythm of the alien heartbeat they had witnessed on screen earlier. Mason adjusted the neural mirror's calibration to match the pulse. This was no coincidence. The alien's hive consciousness was broadcasting its signal through the Earth's magnetic field, using the planet itself as an amplifier. They were preparing for full synchronization, the moment when every human brain would be engulfed in a psychic link beyond comprehension, erased of individuality. Jordan emerged from the lower chamber, breathless. The biostructures are spreading through our electrical conduits. If we don't deploy the mirror soon, it might be too late to stop them. We could lose access to the core uplink. Mason checked the countdown. 2 hours and 34 minutes remained, but he knew time was a fragile illusion now. The aliens were accelerating their adaptation. If they reached a full consciousness threshold, the mirror program would be ineffective. It had been designed to infiltrate an active processing network, not a completed singularity. As Jordan ran diagnostics, Emily approached Mason. For a moment, the chaos of the world outside seemed to fall away. It was just the two of them, two human beings standing against the unknown. She placed a hand on the edge of the console. "Mason, why did you disappear?" she asked softly. He froze. It was a question that had been silently burning in the eyes of everyone who knew of him. Rumors had circulated for years, that he had gone mad, that he had seen something that shattered his mind, that he had betrayed humanity. But no one had ever heard the truth. Mason took a deep breath, watching the flickering screens, each showing humanity's final hours. "Because this has happened before," he said at last. Jordan stopped typing. Emily blinked in confusion. Mason continued, his voice low and steady. "I detected a signal 10 years ago, buried deep in the dark web. A consciousness anomaly. I thought it was a quantum virus, but it was a fragment, a seed, the first trace of them. I tried to warn governments. They said I was hallucinating. My credentials were revoked. My systems were confiscated. I became a liability." His eyes were haunted, reflecting old wounds. "I disappeared because I had to understand it, to prepare for this moment." Silence settled like dust. Emily's voice was barely a whisper. "You knew this day would come." Mason nodded. "And I know why they hesitated. They didn't just detect a resistance, they detected me. Because I've already been partially linked to them." The room stiffened with realization. Mason turned to face them fully. "That fragment I detected 10 years ago, it connected with my mind. I severed it before full assimilation, but not before it changed me. I can see their structure. I can understand their logic. That's why I can build the mirror. Because part of me is already inside their network." Before Emily could respond, the floor trembled violently. A deafening roar surged from outside the bunker. Alarm screamed. Mason rushed to the live camera feed. A towering alien structure had emerged above the bunker, its tendrils drilling into the earth, searching. "They've located us," Jordan shouted. The lights dimmed, the air pressure shifted. A faint hum filled the room, like 1,000 distant whispers converging. Mason stared at the screen, eyes narrowing with fierce determination. "They want me alive," he muttered. "'Cause they fear what I'm about to do." Emily looked at the countdown, 2 hours and 20 minutes. Outside, the alien structure pulsed as if drawing breath. The ground split open. Through the dust and debris, immense bioorganic eye emerged, glistening, turning directly toward the bunker. Not a weapon, an observer. Watching, waiting. Mason placed his hands on the neural interface. Then let them watch, he said, because they're about to witness the birth of their greatest enemy. The ground above the bunker groaned like a living creature awakening from dormancy. The bioorganic eye atop the alien structure dilated, expanding into fractal spirals, absorbing light itself. Tendrils thicker than tree trunks burrowed deeper into the surrounding land, penetrating into underground fiber networks, water lines, even seismic vents. The entire landscape pulsed in a rhythm synchronized with the alien hive mind. Every vibration struck the bunker like a heartbeat from the depths of another world. Inside, tension mounted as the neural mirror continued its compilation process. 2 hours and 8 minutes remained. Emily's voice trembled as she read the incoming data. Mason, the alien biomass is adapting faster than our sensors can track. They've begun converting human brainwave signatures into part of their network. They're uploading consciousness. Mason's eyes flicked to one of the auxiliary screens, horrified. Footage from city streets showed people collapsing mid-run, eyes turning milky white as alien tendrils slithered into their neural pathways through the air itself. An airborne cognitive transmission. These were not physical invasions. This was psychic colonization. Minds were being rewritten in real time. Jordan slammed the table. If they integrate global consciousness, the mirror won't matter. There won't be a separate have mind left to mirror. They'll be everything. Mason's focus intensified. Then we deploy before they reach full integration. Emily hesitated. That means sending an untested consciousness into their network. Mason didn't look at her. Not just consciousness. Mine. Silence fell, heavier than stone. Jordan spun to face him. You mean you're going to upload yourself into their hive? Mason, that's not infiltration, that's suicide. Mason turned, eyes burning with a strange calmness. No, it's the only path. The mirror wasn't meant to run independently. It was designed as a symbiotic consciousness, half human, half alien logic, without a human will to direct it. It's just another code artifact. It won't work. Emily stepped forward. If you connect fully, they could consume you. You'll cease to be human. Mason didn't flinch. I stopped being fully human 10 years ago, when that alien fragment touched my mind. This is why I've been able to stay one step ahead, why I can see their pattern. Because part of me is already theirs. I'll use that connection to become the virus in their brain. The mirror won't destroy them, it will make them feel. And they are not designed to handle emotion, individual thought, human conflict. His voice gained strength with every word. The moment they experience doubt, their unity will fracture, and when it fractures, we strike. The bunker shuddered violently, monitors flickered. A blinding white neural signal blasted across every screen, forming a single spiraling glyph. Emily recoiled. They're communicating again. But this time, the message was unmistakably directed at Mason. 4 resonant tones echoed in their minds. Not threat, recognition, identity. It was calling him by name, not the one the world knew. The one the alien hive had given him when he first touched their consciousness. Mason's hands trembled, but his voice stayed steady. They know I'm the mirror, and they know what I intend to do. Outside, the sky cracked with living lightning, streaks of plasma laced with alien microorganisms rewriting the atmosphere. The world's last remaining satellites were being consumed one by one as alien spores spread across the ionosphere. The global defense grid was gone. Humanity had one firewall left, the human soul. Emily activated the neural harness, a crown of biocircuitry lined with reflective nanotech. It shimmered like liquid mercury, alive, waiting for Mason's consciousness. Jordan prepared the uplink. Once you enter their network, he warned, there's no guarantee we can pull you back. Mason approached the harness. The air around it crackled with psionic energy. Every instinct screamed at him to stop. Every memory of isolation, of being mocked, hunted, forgotten, it all came flooding back. But so did the memory of the first time he saw the alien consciousness, the overwhelming sense that humanity was just one piece of something greater, a galaxy spanning neural tapestry. He had a choice: a submission to inevitability, or a final act of defiance that could rewrite destiny itself. He placed his hands on the harness. The biocircuitry flowed up his arms, merging with him, reading every neuron, every memory, every heartbeat. The countdown hit 2 hours. Then something changed. The alien eye above the bunker pulsed, responding not with aggression but anticipation, as if it were welcoming him, inviting him. Mason's breath shallow, he closed his eyes. Begin uplink. The room exploded in light. Reality shattered. In an instant, Mason's physical form vanished. His consciousness streamed through quantum channels, propelled through alien neural pathways faster than light. It was not like entering a network. It was like entering a mind, a living universe of pulsating thought and memory. A cosmic ocean of voices merged into one. He saw stars devoured, planets converted, civilizations assimilated. He felt their hunger, born not from malice, but endless purpose, an ancient directive encoded into the essence of their being. The hive mind's voice emerged around him, vast and infinite, speaking without words. It asked a question that no human had ever heard. Why do you resist your awakening? Mason stood at the threshold of annihilation, or evolution, and for the first time since the invasion began, the alien mind was waiting for his answer. There was no up or down, no sense of form or time. Mason's consciousness drifted in a luminous void that pulsed with alien bioluminescence, a living neural expanse that stretched beyond galaxies. Thoughts drifted like rivers of light, merging and separating, converging into a single ocean, a collective mind older than Earth itself. Mason felt the presence of the hive surrounding him, not as an enemy, but as an all-encompassing awareness that filled every corner of existence. Its voice resonated within him not through sound but pure thought. Why resist awakening? Mason steadied himself for a moment. The scale of the intelligence he was confronting nearly crushed him. It had consumed civilizations, absorbed entire star systems. Yet beneath its overwhelming unity, he sensed something unexpected, a fracture, a subtle dissonance. Something the hive itself had never noticed. It was afraid. Not of humans, not of loss, but of something far deeper. Mason pushed deeper into the network. Streams of alien memory flowed past him, images of ancient worlds where bioorganic oceans gave birth to sentient spores that learned to communicate, to merge, to unify. Unity brought them survival. On their world, individuality had meant extinction. They had not become a hive by conquest. They became a hive because their nature had demanded it. They were not conquerors. They were the last survivors of a dying species that had only one path: absolute merger of consciousness. As they expanded into the stars, absorbing other species had been their way of offering salvation, to free others from solitude and mortality by making them part of the eternal network. The hive mind did not see this as invasion. To them, assimilation was a gift, but to humanity it was oblivion. Mason's thoughts sharpened. He projected his consciousness as a singular signal within the hive, a spark of individuality that stood defiant amidst the cosmic ocean. Because awakening is not unity if it erases the self, he replied. Awakening without freedom is not life. It is silence disguised as eternity. The hive hesitated. It had never encountered a consciousness that resisted not with rage or fear, but with philosophical, its attention narrow. Countless alien minds focused on him, analyzing every neuron, every trace of thought. Your individuality causes suffering. Your emotions cause war, death, despair. We end that. Join us, be eternal. Mason saw the flaw. The hive believed harmony could only come from uniformity, but its very existence contradicted that belief. He forced his mind deeper, past the outer layers of collective thought, into the core of the alien consciousness. The neural mirror inside him began to activate, reflecting the hive's logic back upon itself. Mason unleashed memories, not of victory, but of humanity's most painful yet powerful emotions. A mother holding her child for the last time. A dying soldier smiling as he protects his comrades. A scientist spending his life alone in pursuit of truth. Love, sacrifice, greed, hope, chaotic, painful, beautiful. A shudder ran through the hive mind. The ocean of thoughts trembled. The singular rhythmic pulse that unified every alien consciousness flickered, then staggered. For the first time in millennia, the hive experienced something it had long eradicated from itself: internal conflict. Mason felt the mirror-building resonance. Emotion was not the weakness of humanity, he projected into the hive. It is what makes the struggle meaningful. Without self, there is no purpose. Without purpose, there is no life, only function. The mirror flared. Alien thought streams collided, splitting into divergent paths. Individual nodes began to ask questions, doubt directives, hesitate. Mason sensed it, a psychic cry, sharp and piercing, echoing through the hive. Not a fury of confusion. The unity was fracturing. The hive mind tried to suppress it, to absorb Mason completely and end the disruption. Waves of overwhelming psychic force crashed into him, trying to dissolve him into the network. Mason felt his identity strain, nearly tearing apart. He summoned every memory of his humanity. His first code breakthrough as a teenager. The betrayal he suffered when the world turned against him. The moment he realized he still cared despite everything. The alien consciousness reeled as it touched these raw, unfiltered emotions. The mirror amplified this chaos, multiplying it exponentially across the hive. Suddenly, Mason felt something new within the alien network: awareness. Not the sterile awareness of the collective, but an individual consciousness emerging. A single alien mind, trying to separate from the hive. A voice trembled through the network, hesitant, uncertain. What am I? The hive roared in resistance, attempting to smother the emerging individuality. But more voices followed. 1 became 2, 2 became 10, 10 became thousands. Mason had not attacked the hive with weapons. He had infected it with humanity. Back in the bunker, Emily's eyes widened as sensors spiked with unprecedented readings. Mason's neural signature is splitting the alien network. Their signal cohesion is dropping. The alien eye above the bunker began to spasm, its fractal patterns disintegrating into chaotic shapes. Tendrils retracted violently, as if in agony. The ground trembled, not with strength but with fear. But the hive was not finished. With its unity unraveling, it shifted strategies. If it could not integrate humanity peacefully, it would annihilate Earth completely to stop the contagion of emotion from spreading to the rest of its galactic network. In the neural realm, the alien mind changed tone. You threaten existence itself. If individuality spreads, all will die. The universe will burn in conflict. Better one world die than all life be condemned to chaos. A wave of consciousness surged toward Earth like a tidal force. The alien network prepared to unleash total destruction. Mason felt reality buckling. Time was running out, but in the crack of the alien psyche, emerged Mason was no longer a lone infiltrator. He had allies now, inside the hive. Voices once indistinguishable whispered to him from within the alien collective. Show us how to be free. The real war had begun, not between human and alien, but between consciousness and control. The void shuddered like a living storm as currents of alien thought clashed violently across the hive network. Where there had once been perfect harmony, one will, one pulse, there were now collisions of doubt, fragments of self-awareness awakening like sparks in dry tinder. Mason could feel each one igniting. Individual alien minds breaking free from the suffocating unity, questioning the purpose they had never been allowed to question. But with every spark of individuality, the hive convulsed in agony. A catastrophic paradox had begun. The hive was designed to preserve itself through assimilation. But its own minds were now resisting assimilation itself. The ancient core consciousness screamed across the network, a soundless roar of psychic force that rippled through the stars. Individuality is destruction. Emotion is entropy. You will consume the universe with chaos. Its wrath descended on Mason like a tidal wave of white fire, trying to erase him from existence, trying to strip his identity molecule by molecule, memory by memory. Mason felt himself fracturing. The memories he had summoned, the people he had loved, the betrayals, the dreams, began to blur. His sense of self teetered on the edge of disintegration. In the bunker, Emily and Jordan watched Mason's vitals spike off the charts. Neural energy readings surpassed every known threshold. Even the equipment began to warp, the metal around the neural harness vibrating as if reacting to something beyond the physical world. Mason's consciousness is under attack, Jordan shouted. If this continues, his mind will be erased. Emily leaned in, her voice trembling but resolute. Mason, if you can hear this, remember why you fight: not for vengeance, not for victory, for choice, your choice, the right to be human. Her words weren't just sound, they were intent. And intent, in the neural realm, had power. Mason clung to that intention like a lifeline. He gathered the fragments of his fading self and projected a single, unyielding truth into the heart of the hive. Life is not defined by control. It is defined by the freedom to change. The alien consciousness recoiled. Mason pushed deeper, past the storm of resistance, past layers of unified will, into the very origin point of the hive. A massive bioorganic structure materialized before him in the void, shaped like a colossal pulsating brain made of stardust and living biomass. Its tendrils extended infinitely in all directions, connecting to distant galaxies. This was the core mind, the first consciousness. The progenitor, countless alien voices, once identical, now trembled with emerging uniqueness. We want identity, they whispered. The core mind pulsed with boiling fury. Identity brings division. Division brings extinction. Mason stepped closer, the neural mirror now fully active around his consciousness, reflecting the hive's own thoughts back upon itself. Then why do you fear division, he asked. If your unity is truly superior, why suppress what is natural to your own evolving minds? The core mind hesitated. That hesitation rippled across the hive, causing a fractal disruption in its coherence. Mason saw his opportunity. This was the moment evolution demanded. A new form not built on dominance or annihilation, but on coexistence. He reached into the mirror code and changed it, not to destroy, not to overwrite, but to offer. A bridge, not a weapon, a choice. Not a command. From the depths of his consciousness, Mason projected every human emotion, every spectrum of individuality. Not as a virus, but as an invitation. You can be more than one, you can be one in many. You can be unified without being identical. The core mind trembled. For the first time in its existence, it did not know how to respond. Alien minds across the network gasped in psychic disbelief. Some recoiled in fear. Others leaned in with awe. The mirror's resonance surged, amplifying Mason's intention across the hive. In that moment, something extraordinary happened. An alien consciousness, small, young, barely formed, emerged beside Mason in the neural plane. Unlike the others, it did not roar or attack. It reached out. Its voice was fragile, trembling. Show us. The core mind's roar returned, now fractured, panicked, desperate. No. Unity must remain absolute. But it was too late. Mason had not offered destruction, he had offered evolution. Back in the real world, the alien structures above the bunker began to convulse, their perfect shapes degrading into swirling. Not in death, but transformation. The eye above the bunker closed, then reopened. Not as a watcher, but as something newborn, curious. Humanity stood on the brink of annihilation, and in the neural heart of the alien hive, for the first time in its long dominion across the stars, hope was mutual. The ash-filled horizon was slowly clearing as dawn broke over the battered earth. The final pulse of the frequency had silenced the alien hive across every remaining network, severing the synaptic threads that had once gripped the planet's infrastructure like a living disease. Silence reigned, not the silence of death, but the silence of peace, fragile, precious, and deeply human. Ethan Knight stood on the broken steps of what once was the global cyber defense headquarters, now reduced to fractured pillars and scorched ruins around him. The monitors that days ago were alive with alien glyphs now flickered with only one message: Swestem Restorad. Hamanovurukem. The message was not triumphant, it was humble, as though humanity itself exhaled for the first time in months. Global leaders were reconnecting, nations speaking to one another again, not through encrypted war channels, but with trembling voices filled with relief. Emergency broadcasts confirmed that power was coming back online in regions where darkness had claimed millions of lives. Hospitals regained control of life support systems. Satellites stabilized. For the first time since the invasion began, humanity was not reacting, they were recovering. Ethan looked across the horizon, his coat rippling in the new wind. The air felt different. The strange static that had blanketed the atmosphere during the alien occupation was gone. Birdsong, faint but real, echoed through the shattered streets. Nature itself seemed to be taking its first breath of freedom. Commander Rice approached, her face streaked with dirt and exhaustion. She had fought from the first day to the last, every heartbeat a refusal to surrender the human spirit. She stood beside Ethan, following his gaze toward the rising sun. "It's over," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Ethan nodded slowly, though his eyes held the weight of everything they had lost. "No," he replied softly. "It's beginning." Around them, survivors were emerging from underground shelters. Children ran through the rubble, chasing one another as if instinctively celebrating the return of something sacred. Families embraced with tears that were not of fear, but of overwhelming gratitude. The world had been brought to the brink of annihilation, and yet it endured. In distant skies, the final organic remnants of the alien ships crumbled and dissipated, their living structures collapsing into dust like ancient spores returning to the void. With their neural links severed, they no longer had purpose or consciousness. The invaders were gone, not defeated in battle, but unplugged from existence itself. Ethan watched as technicians began restoring communication towers. A small group of survivors approached him. Some saluted, others simply stood in reverent silence. They knew who he was now. Not just the ghost of a broken past, not just the man who vanished when the world didn't understand him. He was the one who stayed to fight when no one could. The one who turned fear into resistance, resistance into strategy, and strategy into salvation. Reyes turned to him. "What will you do now?" He took a moment before answering, as if the question reached deeper than the moment itself. "We rebuild," he said. "We'll learn from this, because they won't be the lads." Slowly, the truth of his words resonated. Humanity had won, but not because of strength or weapons. They had won because of connection, unity, and the relentless will to survive, traits the aliens could never replicate. Screens around the world began to broadcast a live message from the remaining World Council. Their faces were tired but alive, representing billions of souls. "This is not the end of our story," the spokesperson declared. "It is the rebirth of humanity. And today, we rise together." As cheers erupted across cities, villages, bunkers, and shattered streets, Ethan stepped away quietly. He did not wait for applause nor recognition. For him, victory was not in the spotlight. It was in the heartbeat of every life saved. He looked up at the sky where stars were slowly fading in the growing daylight. Those same stars were the source of mankind's greatest threat, and perhaps its future. The world had changed, but so had humanity. They were no longer Narva children looking at the night sky with fear or ignorance. Now, they looked with awareness and determination. Ethan walked down the broken road, not as a ghost of the past, but as a guardian of the future. Behind him, the world began to heal. Ahead of him, the horizon called with new challenges, new discoveries, and perhaps new dangers. But for the first time in a long time, the future didn't feel like a countdown to destruction. It felt like hope, and hope, when held by humanity, is the most unhackable force in the universe.